All right, back in the basement again today to talk about some of my favorite powerlifting bars. Now, these are competition style bars, but even though that's the case, I find I use these almost on a daily basis when down here and training. They're probably in my top 5 used barbells, and I have over 40 bars, so that is saying something. Now, these are both from Hansu, and I decided to do 2 for 1. You're getting 2 bars for the price of 1, 2 bars, 1 basement. Only because they are very similar, and I think people will probably be looking at both of these, and it doesn't make sense to make a video on one just to tell you how much I like it, only to then make a video on the other one telling you how much I like it in a couple of weeks, couple of days, however long it would take me to do so, and someone get mad saying, oh, I wish I knew about that other bar instead. So I'm just going to talk about both of these because they are both great options at very different price points. So I'm going to talk about number 1, their more budget-friendly bar, which is a zinc version just called the Hansu 20 kg Power Bar. This one is in zinc. It has a black sticker on it. I'll talk about that in a little bit as well. And below that is the Hansu 20 kg Stainless Steel Power Bar, which has a white sticker. Now, right now in the United States, the cost of these are $300, give or take. I think the specific price is like $291 and $600 or $592, but $300 and $600 just sound better. Free shipping, all that jazz. $300 versus $600. So about twice the cost for the stainless steel version. And I'll talk a little bit about the pricing in this video as well, because that's something that has upset some people as of late. So let's start with the top bar, the zinc bar. So again, this is a competition style bar. I mentioned it has a black sticker on here. I'm just going to break down what you get with this particular barbell. You get a lot of standard, or what I would say is desirable specs when looking at a power bar, meaning that it's a 29 millimeter shaft. It is your standard length. It meets IPF specifications. And in this case, it actually is IPF approved. So that's where you get this black sticker on the front. It says IPF approved. You will see similar stuff and design that is on the sticker on the end caps of this bar. Now, with this, I want to give props to Hansu for going out and doing this. And I'm going to say Hansu this entire video, so get used to it. Hansu, Hansel. So hot right now. I'm sticking with Hansu because I live in Japan, and that's just how I say it. So there's always that. Interesting fact of the day. But with this, props for them for going out and getting IPF approval. Although to be honest, I don't think that's something that really speaks to a lot of people these days here in the States, specifically because the IPF and USAPL, which has a majority of the powerlifters, in my opinion, and also I think fact, if you take a look at membership rates in the United States, where eventually if you did well at USAPL powerlifting, you could potentially compete in IPF. These days, since the split, it would be Powerlifting America, which I have seen the attendance or the membership numbers be pretty low. Again, I don't think it's as big of a draw for people here in the States. Internationally, for sure, but I don't know about this bar's international availability. But I think it's still cool that they went out and got this because it is not a cheap thing to do. So usually you see most IPF approved pieces of equipment being overly expensive. This thing retailing at $300 is a good deal in general. And that's before we get to the rest of the bar. So it's going to meet the specs. It's going to have chrome sleeves, bright zinc shaft, even though that's not noted on the website anywhere. I have confirmed with Hansu that it is in fact a bright zinc shaft, and you get decent knurl overall. So let's talk about a couple of things with this, because I think when it comes to competition style barbells, and for me what that means is the very thin style collars, which obviously both of these have, traditionally speaking, you don't find many bars with what I would consider aggressive knurl. So when you take a look at some of the more well-known IPF approved bars, specifically in this case Eleiko and Rogue, they have good knurling for powerlifting in my opinion, but it's not on the aggressive side. It's more grippy, so it's not something that's going to tear your hands. In fact, I don't think you'll find any competition style bar that is overly aggressive. The one lone exception might be the Bells of Steel's Bare Naked Power Bar. And I said might be because one of the issues I had with that bar in the past was just the inconsistencies in knurling. And even though you might get more aggressive or more aggressive than some of these other bars out here in terms of competition style bars, you do also have to deal with a bare steel shaft and like some super rib sleeves. And just some manufacturing things which aren't top of the line, but that's to be expected because that is a budget power bar, sub $300. So for $300 here, you get what I would consider good knurling for a powerlifting bar. I'll show you some close-ups of it. So it is very good overall. Obviously with the zinc on top of it, you're going to see that it is dulled a little bit, but it's still what I would consider good, all right? Speaking of the knurling itself too, one of the things I really like about these Hansu bars is the fact they utilize a longer center knurl. In fact, it's some of the longest allowed per IPF specs. And I personally like this a lot for squatting. I find that sometimes other knurls in the center, which is like 4 inches, which is like on a standard Texas power bar, it just isn't enough for squats. So the more knurl I get on my back for squats, I feel like the better. So the fact that this is the longest allowed, in my opinion, is better for me, and I prefer it. I don't find it gets in the way for anything like deadlifts or anything of that nature. So the bigger, the better, in my opinion. So overall, knurl on this is fairly good. Obviously, you get the powerlifting knurl mark, so that is pretty standard as well. Now, where this bar starts to exceed a little bit beyond the normal bar, especially in the $300 price range, is some of the finer touches, meaning that if you take a look here, in addition to the sticker, which if anyone knows about the Eleiko competition powerlifting bar with that sticker they have on it, that makes the bar. It's a bare steel bar for $1,200. This one on here, it's a nice touch. Some people don't like it. They find it cheap. They find that they're trying to copy Eleiko. But again, I find that it's a nice little touch. If you don't like it, you could take the sticker off. But you also have some laser etched naming right here, right on the shaft itself. It says Hansu Power. I like that as well. Some people might also say they took that from Eleiko, which is fine, right? Eleiko is like the top dog, cream of the crop in most people's eyes. So trying to emulate the best isn't necessarily a bad thing. Now, what's really cool out here is when you get to the actual collars on the sleeves themselves. They, of course, are the thin style, competition style collars that you would expect from a competition bar, but they also have TIG welding on them. So something that you normally would see on like an American barbell bar, which is going to start retailing at around $600 or more potentially. Really nice touch here, considering again, this is a $300 bar. I also find the tolerances on the sleeves are super good. Super good is a terrible way to describe it, but let me tell you what I mean by that. Number one, putting plates on is kind of difficult. The plates sit on here super tight, which I like for a competition style bar, right? Especially when you're packing on thin competition style plates, you don't want any slop on the plates themselves. They're gonna stay nice and tight and compact on this bar to make it super stiff feeling, which of course, referencing the specs again, is something that you would expect from a 205K 10 seal 29mm barbell with thin competition collars. In addition to that, this bar has very little slop or float in the sleeves, so you don't get a lot of jiggle, at least on mine, which again leads to a better experience. Now, if I do the super scientific drop test with this bar, comparing it to some others, what you'll notice is this bar is very well put together overall. Now, some negatives potentially with this bar that I have seen myself or that I have heard from others has to deal with the pricing structure of it. So even though this bar is still a great bargain at $300, about a month or so ago when this bar first released, it was about $240 delivered, which was almost impossible to beat. And I rarely do this when I talk about pieces of equipment, but I posted on Instagram, was like, you guys have to buy this bar. Go out and buy it right now. You will not find a better deal. For the most part, when I do video reviews or talk about equipment, I try to frame it in a way of, who is this bar good for? Who might not this bar be for? And try to leave it up to you to make the best informed decision. But in this case, for $240, initially priced, this was a no-brainer that you had to buy. Like, even if you didn't want a competition style bar, for $240 and getting some of the higher end features, the feel of the knurl, all that stuff, you had to buy it. The problem is now is they raised the price up to $300. So even though it's still a great deal in my opinion, considering everything you get, it's not as good of a deal. So it's a little bit of a bummer for some people who waited to buy it just to have it jump up that significantly in such a short time. One of the things that I've heard from people on this bar too that they don't like, which hasn't been a problem for me, is the spin on the sleeves. They say the sleeves don't spin well. And to be honest, that's not a problem that I've ever found with hardly any power bar because I'm not concerned with the sleeve of the spin. Spin of the sleeve. Nice job. Should really try to plan these videos out a little bit better. But I mean, if I just go ahead and spin these with my hand, yeah, they don't spin much. If I put a plate on here, they spin fine. Again, not something I'm overly concerned with. One of the things that people also call out as not liking is the fact that when you take a look at the knurling, it extends all the way out and underneath the sleeve itself. This could also lead to the sleeve not spinning as smoothly. But again, I haven't had any problems with that, but just something to note that if you do have that issue, you may want to reach out to the company to kind of get it figured out, but I haven't found that to be a problem overall. So for $300, this is probably one of the best bargains you can buy, in addition to being one of the better built bars at that price point. Now, the main competition for this bar is going to be the Rogue 20 kg Black Zinc bar, which retails for $350 before shipping and tax, which is probably going to put it around $400. So for $100 less, you get, in my opinion, what is a better feeling bar and a better quality bar in terms of what's put together. I'll speak to some stuff in the quality and some downsides of both these bars in just a minute. But overall, great barbell if you're interested. So let's take a look at the bar right beneath it. Now, for the most part, this is going to be almost identical in terms of the specs. 29 millimeters. In this case, you're talking about 200K tensile strength. The overall look and feel is actually really similar. The knurl feels a little bit better because in this case, you're dealing with stainless steel instead of zinc. You do get the sticker as well. In this case, it's a white sticker, and again, it matches the end caps. This was the first run of these stainless steel bars. I call that out because from what I can tell, and from what Hansu can confirm with me, is the newer stainless steel bars is actually also going to have the lasered name on the shaft, as well as the TIG welded sleeve. So it's going to kind of be a hybrid of what you see here. But again, those are just more aesthetic things that aren't going to kind of come into play with the overall usability of this bar, which still remains extremely high. So stainless steel shaft, you still get the longer center knurl, you still get really good feel, you still get those really tight tolerances on the sleeves in terms of the fit of the plates, as well as the float on the sleeves itself, hardly any. So again, doing the scientific drop test, very very well sounding bar. It's a solid bar, right? Thing with this is it's $600. Now, let me kind of unpack that a little bit because that's a high price point for a lot of people, and I agree. Number one, when you're taking a look at comparison-wise of stainless steel barbells, competition style, IPF spec or IPF approved in this case, it's kind of a mixed bag. The main two competitors in this case for stainless steel are going to be the Rogue 20 kg stainless steel Ohio Power Bar, which I think is like $450. So after shipping and tax, think around $500. So for $100 more, you could get this. The main benefit to going this over Rogue is you get that longer center knurl. You get the, in my opinion, tighter tolerances on the sleeves, but there are some downsides, which again, I'll talk about at the end of this video because it applies to both of these bars. So that's going to be kind of a hard pill to swallow. Made in America versus made in China. Are those things important enough to you to warrant the extra $100 or not? Now, one of the things that also plagued this bar that I'll call out right now is the price change. And I say that because, again, about a month or two ago, this bar, which now retails for $600, was roughly like $440 before. So in the event of the bar up top on the zinc bar going from $240 to $300, $50 to $60, it sucks, but it's still doable. $300 is a good bargain. Going from $440 to $600 is an extreme jump in price. And to be honest, based off of my knowledge of the market and the industry and the cost of stainless steel and doing business and producing bars like this, I don't think $600 is crazy, but to go from $440 to $600 is a very tough pill to swallow, and I know that annoyed and angered a lot of people. Now, in context of the market, again, the Rogue bar being around $500, or if you take a look at the Eleiko bars that I own, number one, the bare steel version, which retails for $1,200, or the new stainless steel training bar, which is still around $1,100 or $1,150. this bar is half the price. And I think in terms of the specs and the feel and the build quality, you might be surprised for me to actually say that I think that they're actually very similar. If not, the Hansu might actually be better in some regards based off my experience with the bar. I think $600 is still a good deal for this bar. However, that brings me to the big problem with either of these bars in comparison to the rest of the market. I think for a lot of people, buying overseas stuff from China is a tough pill to swallow, which I understand, especially when you're talking about a $300 or $600 bar. And especially when, from what I've seen, just in general, I'm not calling out Hansu here in particular, but just in general, it's kind of like the wild, wild west, meaning that there's a lot of companies that manufacture the same bar or the same equipment for a lot of people. Now, I haven't seen that yet with Hansu and their barbells, with one exception. That exception being Lu Zhaojun. People always get mad how I say that, so I'm just going to say the LXJ bar. Does that make you feel better? You may recall that I did a review on a couple of years ago, their stainless steel Mastery Power Bar, which I said I think I actually like more than my Rogue Ohio Power Bars. That bar and this bar, the stainless steel version, is the same bar from what I can tell. However, from what I can tell, it's also the same parent company who owns both Lu and Hansu. Hasn't been confirmed to me, but that's just my suspicion and based off what I can tell on my own research. I've been interneting for a long time, so I feel like pretty confident when I say that. But that being said, I'm always hesitant just because I've seen it happen before where a company comes out with what I think is a great piece of equipment, and then another company just has that manufacturer that they use, reproduce it, and slap their label on it. So it's kind of tough, especially again when you're talking about a $300 or especially a $600 barbell. One of the other things that is kind of a downfall of going overseas and importing is the consistency across the line. So for example, the consistency of the bars that I've got from Hansu have been really, really good. But for instance, like the newer stainless steel barbell has already been updated and this one hasn't been out that long, right? I think I've had this for maybe like 6 months or so, and they've already changed again by adding the etching on, adding the TIG weld. So they've been upgraded. But I've mentioned the bare steel bar before from Bells of Steel, bare naked bar. And there's a lot of naked and stainless and steel going on. I'm getting all confused. But I've mentioned inconsistencies with them and just any importer, things just change over time. Again, haven't seen it here yet, but I understand when you're sinking a lot of money into a piece of equipment that those are things that constantly pop up. And in some cases, going with a more expensive route, maybe with an Eleiko, or maybe a more trusted route with a Rogue where you know what you're getting and it's made in USA and you feel a little bit more confident. I think those are just things that are inherently built into our buying process. But I will say that either of these two bars, in my opinion, are great. And if you're willing to make the investment, I don't think you will be dissatisfied with them, but it's up to you about what's more important. Do you want a really good bar with really good specs and really good finishes? Or do you want something that's made in the USA just to kind of ease your pain in that regard? I think either way, there's a lot of great options on the market today. We're in a great spot to be in. But if you're looking for what I consider some of the best power bars on the market, specifically competition bars, these are two to really consider. Let me know what you think in the comments section below. In the meantime, as always, thanks for watching and stay big.